Coming up next, today's classic band was coming off a massive rock hit and a spectacular album, and they needed to keep the momentum going, and the answer came in one of the most unlikely hits of the 70s. First of all, the song was a simple finger-picking exercise that the guitarist was working on to get more limber. As he was playing it, his wife commented at how great this song was and that he should put lyrics to it. That's when the guitarist just laughed. He explained to his wife, it's just a simple exercise. But she said, you really should put lyrics to it. Well, he listened to his wife, and it's a good thing he did, but it was a crazy idea. He was worried about showing it to the band. It didn't fit their sound at all, and it wasn't even a song. But against his better judgment, he did put lyrics to it. Not just any lyrics, though. Words from a 6,000-year-old book. So he played it for the band, and they all knew it had to be their next single. It wasn't an easy song to record, though. It made the guitarist's fingers bleed. And the singer had to pull the emotional vocal from a very deep place in his soul. It was a revelation, though. It became the band's only top 10 hit, and it's become one of the most famous songs of all time. Coming up next, an interview with the band on this unbelievable story. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you become an expert fixing 8 tracks and cassettes when they were eaten by your stereo back in the day, you're going to be right at home with this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below right now so you don't miss out on our daily content, stories of the songs straight from the legends. Also, if you'd like to be an honorary producer of our content, you can see more videos with Patreon. Just click on the link below. So it's time for another edition of our series, The New Standards. This is a show that takes an in-depth look into songs that really transcend genre, decade, and fad. Songs that are monumental touchstones in our culture and our society. Now today we're going to take a deep dive into one of the greatest and most thought-provoking ballads of the entire rock era. And we got direct insight from the band's guitarist. I'm talking about Dust in the Wind by Kansas.
All they are is dust in the wind.
Kansas is one of the biggest classic rock bands ever. They've had 9 gold albums, 3 multi-platinum records. They spent over 200 weeks on the Billboard charts. That was just in the 70s and 80s. Easily one of the biggest Rock and Roll Hall of Fame snubs as well. They got to get that right. After hitting number 11 with their rock anthem, Carry On Wayward Son, in 1976. And setting the bar with their masterpiece album, Leftoveture. They went back into the studio, and they were ready to show what they could do with their follow-up album. The recording sessions for Point of No Return commenced in June of 77 at Studio in the Country in Louisiana. It's the same place that Kansas had recorded their previous 2 albums. But then due to equipment failure, they were forced to change venues, change recording sites. The majority of the recording then took place at Woodland Studios in Nashville through July of that year. And actually, a lot of people don't know this, but lead singer Steve Walsh left during the sessions, wanting to go after a solo career. He ended up recording on the bulk of the album. But the band was focused on their signature sound, and of course, Dust in the Wind is known for its sparse acoustic nature, which was in direct contrast to their style at that point. One night, guitarist Kerry Livgren, he was at home playing a finger exercise. It was meant for improving finger picking. And he played through it a couple of times, and his wife, Vicky, heard what he was doing. She told him that she thought that the melody was really beautiful and, that he should put lyrics to it. Now, Livgren was pretty reluctant to do this since he felt it was not in line with the music that the band was currently working on. It was a real departure. But sometime later, he showed the band when their producer asked if anybody had any more songs for the album. And as soon as he played it, they knew it would be a big song for them. The lyrics have been talked about a lot. Many assume that Livgren took the title Dust in the Wind from the Bible, where in Genesis 3 it says, "You are dust, and to dust you shall return." And while it's true that it probably was an influence in his mind, Livgren said he wrote this after reading a book of Native American poetry. The line that caught his attention was, "For all we are is dust in the wind," which really inspired him.
Dust in the wind.
It started him thinking about the true value of material things and the definition of success. I mean, Kansas was killing it at this point. They were making great money. They had fame, notoriety. But Kerry realized in the end he would eventually die just like everybody else. And no matter how successful he or this band was, they would still return to being dust. Really deep stuff. The other band members commented on the song in interviews throughout the years, and I thought that it would be fun to share their perspectives before we get into the interview. As singer Steve Walsh would say in 1979, and I quote, "I thought Dust in the Wind would be a hit from the very first. It defies the basic formulas, the Boston Foreigner Heart formula, that most rock groups try to follow. They don't realize that it's not the formula that matters. It's the song." Love that. Drummer Phil Ehart commented in 1989, he said, "We're a hard rock band that's known mostly for a ballad that we did over 10 years ago. We're an album band. It's a fluke if any of our songs was a hit single." The band members would admit that this being their biggest song, it was a total fluke, a total accident that nobody could have ever predicted. Up next, we have the story of the song from Kansas guitarist Rich Williams, who gives some amazing insight on the painstaking process that the band went through to record this masterpiece, including playing it as precisely as possible, so much so that he bled. We also have several singers from the band throughout different times commenting on their experience interpreting the song. It's just a masterpiece. Here's Rich with the story of Dust in the Wind.
It's a unique song because it's not any genre. Once in a while, a song will cross all boundaries and be sort of timeless.
Dust in the Wind, that's a song that it's part of the Great American Songbook. That doesn't happen very often, or a rock and roll song. I'm talking about the Cole Porters.
Then I suppose anything goes.
The George Gershwin. If you go back and you look at popular music in America and you say, this is a standard. This is a great American standard.
A song that defies all time.
It does. Tell me about that song, because my understanding is that Kerry was just doing kind of an exercise, a finger-picking exercise.
Well, we were playing a club in Des Moines, Iowa, and we were, on Saturdays, we were the backing band for anybody that wanted to jam. We would go up there for like 2 weeks. And there was a guitar player up there who was a little bit more accomplished than us. Neither one of us really played any acoustic at all. And he showed us how to, this finger Travis picking style. And that's pretty cool. Kerry, a few years later, in wanting to just remember that, just wrote a finger exercise for it, to just remember this picking style. So he started moving the chords around a bit to make something to practice over. And his wife just kept mentioning, that's really nice. You ought to write a song with that. And it was like, really? Why would we? That's not what we do. It's not who we are. We've never done anything like that. Right. But so he brought it in a bit reluctantly to rehearsal, again, like Wayward Son, toward the end of...
Yeah, late edition.
And I got this other song, and it's like, boom, there it was. It wasn't anything we rehearsed again. So it wasn't until we went to Bogalusa, and we were having some trouble with the equipment, breakdowns. So we had to we went to Woodland Studio in Nashville. And that's where I got the acoustic tracks. So we didn't start on it until I got the basic tracks done. Prior to that, the only finger picking I'd done is I'd borrowed a banjo from a friend and took a few banjo lessons. I thought it'd be kind of fun to play. And so the finger picking I'd done was those steel finger picks and that thumb pick. So that's how I learned to play. And so we go in recording, and in those days, there's not a break in that song, and you're recording on 2-inch tape, so you couldn't just cut and paste things in like you could now. And even punching in that old equipment, when you do a rolling punch, it made a lot of noise when you just got just a guitar. And so I had to record that whole thing in its entirety. But it's not just one guitar. Then I double tracked it. Then I did it called a high-strung guitar, which is just the high strings of a 12-string, and then did it in nylon string. Well, you get ear fatigue when you're working on the same thing all day long. And so we really didn't notice it. It just sounded great. Everything was great. But I come into the studio the next morning and people are just kind of looking at the floor. I thought, what is it? Because I thought maybe they'd accidentally erased it or something. And Jeff said, just sit down here and listen. So I listened, there it is. Oh, it just sounds great. But all of a sudden, you sort of, in the background, you hear this clack, 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 clack.
Oh.
And it sounded like Clydesdales dancing in the background. And it was the sound of these metal picks, striking the strings. And, with 4 tracks of them, it was just jumping out. And once you heard it, you couldn't unhear it. Okay, so we started over. So I spent the entire next day re-recording it, but using just meat instead of picks. I didn't have any calluses, so I got it done. I had bleeding fingers when I was done.
Wow.
Ow.
That is the song where I really learned how to play an acoustic guitar. That was the beginning of that. And from that moment on, that became so much a part of, when songs go from first to chorus to middles to whatever, in needing texture changes and changes in dynamics and things like that, to always rely on that element. Because I always liked where Kansas would go from this sound, and then all of a sudden this. It'd be then the next section would be built slightly different way. Then, it all kind of come together. And so Kerry's mistake and, Kerry's finger-picking exercise, became one of the biggest things that ever happened to Kansas. And that introduced me into using a lot more acoustic guitar on everything.
Outside of the fact that you've only inspired millions and millions of other guitar players.
Right.
Well, I talked to, guitar teachers, and 9 times out of 10, they will say, first song I teach kids.
When a kid picks up the guitar,
when they start finger picking,
it's either the it's either Stairway to Heaven or it's Destined to Win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But kids to strum, and they want to finger pick. That's song number 1. I talked to Martin, guitarist. I said, just how many of these guitars do you think that song is? how many guitars that song has sold for you? I mean, who could count? And then my ex-wife could read and write music, so Kerry kind of sang out the violin parts for her, and she scribed it all for Robbie.
Wow.
And he recorded, the violin sections there at Woodland. I mean, it was just 2 lines, this one hanging and this one counterpoint melody. So that was done, and then the project went on to Los Angeles because we ran out of time there, and so most of the vocal tracks were done out in Los Angeles, where Steve did the lead vocal track for. And he knocked it out of the park on that one.
Oh, he did.
Nothing lasts forever but the earth and sky.
I also read that Kerry was reading Native American poetry.
Yeah, it was very much inspired by a book he was reading about, Native American culture and philosophy and stuff. And that thought was in that book he was reading, and so that's where he drew from that.
Destined to Win, like when Steve sings it on the recording, it's he becomes those lyrics.
Just in the wind.
What's it like for you to sing it? I mean, each night you guys, the second that you hear you hear the first chord,
well,
the crowd.
I love it. I mean, we can be in Sofia, Bulgaria, and I play the first note, and everybody in the building knows every bit of the song, every lyric, every line of it, the melody. They'll have a personal story, about that song, how it relates to them. So, and I'm the guy that gets to start that. So that's awesome.
I know.
Yeah, it's stereotypical because we'll start the song and you hear that applause at the beginning, but real quickly the applause just goes down to nothing because everybody's just really wants to listen to that song so intently. And then the sea of, camera phones come out, know, and everybody's, you could watch it without using your phone, but it's intense. And you could see over the audience how, just the intensity that people are listening to that song, and you know that it's so indelible in their minds. They've heard it so many times. What did they say, that as many times as Dust in the Wind has been played, if you were to play it back to back, it would be like 21 years or something. Wasn't it like that?
Yeah.
Some incredible amount of time. So, you know, it's just
well, you gotta
like
have
Wayward
vocal
Son.
chops to do justice to that song, especially the you know, that part.
How he's breaking into his falsetto there and stuff. And you know, I attribute the development of my voice from listening to Steve and trying to emulate Steve from the first Kansas album I bought. So, you know, no pressure.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those songs. Like I said, I can't think of a band that has that 1-2 punch. I mean, you guys have that huge rock epic song that's punch people in the face, guitar, all that. And then you've got the greatest ballad, you know?
Soothing, melodic.
Yeah, that's like, makes you really think about your life. I mean, when you hear that song, it's like, it's methodical, right?
Well, I think they're both kind of a perfect storm in that they both kind of defy what was on the radio at the time, which makes them musically kind of timeless. And lyrically, they're definitely, you know, they hold up lyrically today just as strongly as they did then. They're not dated like so many songs are. They really date themselves any time. Those lyrics will mean the same in 100 years or 500 years. You know, there are so many bands that are so good and that had so many hits at the time. But, you know, lyrically, we wanted to have something an alternative lyric, something with a little bit more meaning. How many ways can you sing about a girl and all of that? And there's plenty. That's fine. That's what you want to do. You could do it. There's nothing wrong with good times, rock and roll, and all that. But we'd already done that. We'd played all those covers and done those things. Since that is another thing that set us apart. Is we want the lyrics to mean something, have a little bit more meaning than just what all the other rock songs have in common.
Well, another song that you guys have that has marinated with pop culture as well at large, like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, you know? When he says, where's Dust in the Wind to Socrates? I mean, that's just great.
All we are is dust in the wind, dude.
You know?
Did you see the Jim Parsons?
From Big Bang Theory?
Yeah, they did our Dust in the Wind video. It's incredible.
Every next scene, you see Robbie's hair is longer and longer.
But, you know, they shot it. It looks exactly like it. The mannerisms of everybody.
John Alfonte just did a cover it a couple years ago.
Kerry didn't cop the guitar exercise, but he was working on this thing that had kind of a similar strumming pattern to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like in the lounge at the studio. It was da 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 da, and it turned to da 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 da. You know, the guys are going, "Hey, that's cool, man." So I mean, the song just like came out of nowhere. And when I do it these days, I do my own version of it because I didn't want to. I still wanted to pay respects to the song, you know, and the version I do definitely does. But I do my own version where the guitar part is spelled out on a piano. And it's been in a lot of movies.
Oh, yeah.
It's been made fun of. You know, but I don't care how much you trash that song. I love the song. It's deeply spiritual to me, which, you know, it can come across as a very empty song to some people. But I look at it as a very positive song because it's true. I mean, you know, we're death and taxes, you know.
Just a phenomenal song. And what does it feel like to know that 500 years from now, that song's still going to be played?
Ask me then.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about this classic 70s masterwork. This is truly one of the great standards of our time. What are your memories of this song and the lyrics? What do they mean to you? If you like our channel, we invite you to subscribe below so that you can be a full-time part of this channel, never miss out on any interviews. Now check us out on Patreon. We have more content there. And until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.